how long did these talks go on? You said you remember them at 7. Did they go on for the rest of the time you lived at home?
The talks
at the dinner
table and also outside the dinner table went on all the way through my life, for as long as he was alive.
Were there also talks that took place in the basement?
Yes. He would sit in the higher chair, and I would sit on the couch usually.
How close would you sit?
I would sit kind of hunched over, and my knees would be in between his knees, and he would be hunched over too, and our heads would be touching, and we would talk that way.
And what would he talk about?
Either we went over what I was going to do the next day if I had a match or practice, or there would be something that he was disturbed about, that he needed to. I would repeat phrases, and we'd basically go over the philosophies that were to correct whatever he didn't like that happened. Like,
give me an example.
Well, when I was playing soccer on the team with Mr. Gross, with this kid Jerry was playing, and his picture was on the wall at one point. And I believe I was 7 or 8. I'm not sure. And at one point I had a conversation with Jerry and his dad, and they were Jerry's dad pretty much always came to the games too, and he would take Jerry aside after the coach finished talking to everybody, and he would sort of laugh and talk with Jerry, and sometimes I wander over in that direction, and my dad would usually call me back, say, I want to talk to you, and we talked. One time Jerry's father came over and he grabbed me and said he wanted to talk to me about something. He wanted Jerry and I to get together and practice outside the team and do something. So he was talking to me about it, and I talked to him about it, and then the game resumed. And in the basement, my dad brought it up. He said, you were over talking to Jerry and his dad. Well, what did I tell you about having friends? I said, he just wanted to talk to me about practicing after Dad. I think it's a good idea. He said, no. What did I tell you about having friends? And then he'd say, let's go over it. And that's when we put our heads together. And that's when I would repeat to him.
What would you repeat?
Phrases from his books. And that time I repeated a phrase, or I would just sit there and he would say, tell me what I told you about friends. And I would say, I have to constantly struggle because there are forces that tear me down, and sometimes they'd be disguised in the form of a smile or the hand of a friend.
Was that a quote from something?
It was a quote from the book. And he would repeat it, and then I would repeat it, and he would repeat it, and then I would repeat it, and he would say, good.
How many times would you repeat it back and forth like that?
A couple times.
And in these talks, when your heads were together like that, if you said something that was a mistake, what would happen?
He would bump my head.
Hard?
Not too hard, just enough. This was very trance-like. I usually had my eyes closed, and his forehead was on my head, and we would just repeat things in this voice. Sometimes his voice would get harder if he was trying to emphasize, or if he didn't like what I was saying, he would just bump my head like that, and I'd try to go back and do it again. And We would do that for a long time.
What's a long time?
Well, in Muncie, it would be like over an hour, I would say at least, because he would take me through the whole match the next day.
And did he have a particular book that he liked to teach you about?
Yes.
And what was that book?
That was The Greatest Salesman in the World.
And did he have you memorize substantial portions of the book?
Certain passages I memorized.
Do you remember any of them today?
Not too many of them. I remember most of the titles of the passages. I remember some of the passages.
Was there one in particular that was important to him about sheep?
There were two that were important. One was, I will master my emotions. If I feel depressed, I will be master of my emotions. Today, I will be master of my emotions. If I feel depressed, I will sing. If I feel sad, I will laugh. If I feel ill, I will double my labor. If I feel fear, I will plunge ahead. If I feel inferior, I will wear new garments. If I feel poverty, I will think of wealth to come. If I feel insignificant, I will remember my goals. I will be master of my emotions. And this is the same part of the book that the paragraph about friends is in.
Why was mastering your emotions important?
It was really crucial to Dad, and a great sign of weakness to display emotion, happy or sad, as there's another passage I don't remember as well about being too happy, too confident, too pleased with yourself, and to remember your failures and things of that sort. So neither one. Somebody just unemotional that you couldn't read.
What was the advantage to that? Did he explain to you?
Yeah, that you couldn't be read. In the sports context, that's all that would be, not to give away what you're feeling, especially with regards to me, who seem to have a problem with nerves, fear, inability to. Another line I forgot is, if I feel uncertain, I will raise my voice. And that's a problem I had, speech problems, things of that sort. They were very important for me. If I could master these things, I could reach my goals. I was not born into this world in defeat, nor does failure course within my veins. And then it would go, I am not a sheep waiting to be prodded by my shepherd. I am a lion, and I refuse to walk and to talk and to sleep with the sheep. And I will hear not those who weep and complain, for their disease is contagious, and let them join the sheep. And we would say that at the end of most of our talks in Muncie, and then we sort of didn't say it as much later on. But that was the theme, that other kids weren't trained in the way I was. They didn't come from the same bloodline, and they had this disease of mediocrity, and it was contagious, and to stay away from, and that it was very tempting, and I was a weak person, and I seemed to be tempted for some reason to hang out with other kids, and I needed to remind myself, and so we worked on it.
Did you get to be friends with the other kids on the team?
No, not really.
Why not?
I just didn't spend any time with them, and my dad didn't want that.
Why not?
It's just part of his philosophy. If I started becoming friendly with these other players, I wouldn't be competitive.
If your team lost, would they all get together and go to the pizza parlor afterwards, even though they lost?
They would.
Did you get to go?
No.
What was your dad's philosophy about that?
He was very belittling of the coach for allowing and the players to be going to pizza parlors to hang out after a loss. And he believed all through sports that the people that win are the ones that hate losing. And the idea that there would be smiles on kids' faces after they lost a game was really, he's just outrageous to him. And if I even went near anybody, or, you know, I had to look, and would purposely look pretty devastated after matches, pretty similar to that picture, that my dad would be satisfied, because he would be very angry.
When your dad sat down with you, would he then focus his attention on you?
Yes.
Would he ask you about your day?
Yes.
And was that standard? He said he would always ask you about your day?
Yes.
Can you show me now how that conversation would go? We're talking when he's 6 years old in Muncie still, Your Honor. How would the conversation go? What would he say?
He would just start eating, and he would say, "So, how'd it go today?" And the ones I recall the most are the ones where it didn't even go so well. And I would say, "Oh, it went great, and I did real good today." And he would say, "That's not what I heard." I would say, "No, Dad, I did real well." And he would say, "Well, take me through the day." And I'd always start with getting up. I got up, I got ready. I did my stretching exercises before the day began. If he didn't like what I was saying, he would say, "Well, let me see what you did." And I would get up and I would just show him basically how I worked my legs and my arms and my hip area and my neck, and went through the exercises or the specific ones that he wanted. And then he would say, "Okay, that's good. You can come back." And I'd come back, and he'd say, "Okay, what happened next?" And I said, "Well, I got ready and went to school." And always I would forget something, and he would say, "No, you just got ready and you went to school? That's it?" And I said, and I would usually remember, I would say, "No, I thought about my day first. I sat down like you said, and I thought about it." Sometimes it would be that I ate the foods that he wanted me to eat before, whatever it was. Usually it was like I thought about the day. He'd say, "Well, what did you think about? You didn't just sit there and think about your day." I said, "No, I went, thought about concentrating at school, being polite. I thought about staying away from the other kids and thinking about what I was going to do after school with sports, and then what I was going to work on in the evening." And I basically went through all the things that I would normally say. And then he would say, "Good, good." And then I'd go through the day, and I'd say, "Well, then I went to school, and I had this first class," and he would usually say, "I don't want to hear about the school right now. Tell me what happened afterwards." And so I'd come back and say my mom picked me up, and we went to Sportorama, and I had my lesson, and he'd say, "Did you work on your backhand like we talked about?" I'd say, "Yeah." And my mom would be like in the kitchen somewhere, and during these conversations, occasionally, she would just make a noise and shake her head. She'd go, and my dad would grab me, and he'd yank me out of the table, and he'd just drag me down to the room, and he'd say I was lying. And I would be in the room, and then he would go, and he would punish me.
Did this happen every night at dinner?
Not like that.
Were you asked about your day every night at dinner?
Mm-hmm.
Is that yes?
Yes.
And how long would it take you to go through your day? for him?
About an hour. Not even. Maybe 45 minutes, depending on how much detail he wanted or how much he wanted out of the lesson. Sometimes he just cut the dinner short and wanted me to talk to me downstairs.
Do you have a basement downstairs?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And when you had finished telling him everything that happened during the day, if you did it well, would you get, if you had thought about all the things he told you to think about and done all the exercises the way he told you to do them and had reported it all perfectly, would he show some sort of approval or be happy about it?
Sometimes he would reach and take my hand and say, "That's a good boy."
Just ruffle your hair? Did he ask you about other things at the table besides how your day went and exactly what you did?
Well, after we did the day, we talked about, he basically gave some sort of lecture on things that we had talked about before. He'd talk about battles, and it was mostly historical. He'd talk about the Roman period and generals and it's the philosophies that sometimes he'd incorporate into the way he was at work with these philosophies and how I should be at school and on the soccer field or with my other people that play tennis, my competitors, and go through different, basically a philosophical talk.
Would he ask
Sometimes he'd want it. I'm sorry.
Would he ask you questions?
Yeah, sometimes he'd want answers or my response to what he'd said. So I'd give him my response.
What if you didn't know the answer?
Sometimes, if it depended on what the question was, but if I could look it up, he'd make me go find the passages in his little library of books that he had, which was in the other living room. And I'd spend my time searching. If I found it, I came back. If enough time went by, he'd say, "Just forget about it, just come back." And then I'd come back and sit down, and he'd tell me the answer. Sometimes I would get a lot of answers wrong, and he would just sort of start tensing up and shaking his head, and he'd sort of just explode.
What would happen when he exploded?
He'd just reach out and he'd grab you. And usually with me, he'd open the sliding glass window and he'd just throw me outside onto the porch. And just close the door.
How long would you stay outside?
A few hours.
This happened only in the summertime?
No. I remember the winter times most.
And
Because then I would go into the nice doghouse they made. It had the wood chips in it, it was warm, and I'd hang out in there.
Did you keep any provisions in there for these times?
I did in Pennington.
What did you
In Muncie, I didn't.
keep? In Pennington, what type of things did you keep in the doghouse for when you were thrown out?
I kept the blanket that I kept in there always, and toilet paper I kept in there, sometimes food.
So this is something that went on for most of your life living in the house, is that you'd be thrown outside as a punishment?
Until I was like 17. I don't remember it after that.